you
And
get
we're
it
live.
to how'd you get it to go in as the Wednesday thing? Because every time I
You actually have to do it through YouTube, but I don't want to explain this now because we're live. Silence! The show
Alright.
is starting, you plebs! Everyone,
Alright.
bow down before the patriarchy! Okay. So anyway, I guess the topic today is education, and that is kind of a personal topic to all of us. Obviously, everybody has to go through a public education system in America. I mean, there's private schools and shit like that, but generally most of us have gone through the public education system. It's kind of the default, and we were just wanting to talk about our experiences in and out of it, and also just the general state of education in America. So, Wednesday, take it away.
there's multiple experiences that I have been through that I remember honestly. And it's strange to me that the most prevalent things in my mind about my education through, elementary, middle, and high school were not the education that much as it was everything else, the experience, I guess. Um, and it's tricky to where to start. I'd say overall it was pretty negative for me because it didn't seem like there was any point to it all. And, you hear that from a lot of students, and it's like, oh, that student just doesn't want to do any work. But truly, it is going through public education here, from what I've noticed, it's just about the test, basically. From the moment you start going to public school, going to school, period, you are expected to just pass a test, pass the test. In high school, we different classes would require a test called the E.O.C. And of course, and it was a big important test that we basically, in some classes, that's all we would have to study for. It wasn't about, even though we would ask questions about related to the material, like specifically American history, um, we would ask all these tons of questions, and we would want to learn and learn, like an education should do. It should bring questions forward, and they should get answered. But instead, it was, we have no time for that. We got to study for the EOC. We got to study for the test. And it was standardized tests that held us back in every class I can think of, American history, economics, anything that we needed to learn and we would ask questions about for the topic. It was like, oh, sorry, we got to study what they tell us to study. And it was stuff that I honestly could not tell you anything about, most of it. That's just, the, it's and some of the work they would have us do, like in American history, they would have us write. There was this assignment about flashcards, and this was over 400 something flashcards that you had to do. I don't remember how long you had. You had like a month or so, a couple months, but like you had to write all these flashcards, and the only purpose of it was to study for this end of course exam and to ready yourself, when in reality most students were stressing the fuck out because they have to get all these cards done and they're not even really studying the cards, they're just getting them written out. And these standardized tests, they don't, no students take these standardized tests, and when you don't produce the results on any of them, or if you don't produce results on certain ones, you're basically looked upon by the state and by other schools as a non-performing student. And it's horrible because you have students who just because they're not spending every second of every minute, blood, sweat, and tears on every test they take and every assignment, they're great students. They're even better than some of the A+ students. They are probably they're more productive as a person. And yet, because they are not making that grade and because they are not enabled to do better, they are just shown to be not worth getting into colleges, not getting the money, not getting the recognition in school, and it's so strenuous. Um, and it's extremely strenuous because, especially with myself, where I'm a pretty high performing person when it comes to anything, especially school, but I cannot always make the grade. So when I don't make that A or sometimes that B, if I'm making a C or a D even, because I could not focus on the test for whatever reason, I've had it like extreme things get in the way of me being able to pass it. But yet to and they tell you from the moment you begin to focus on these standardized tests that they're not going to read it. That when you're writing an essay, for instance, down here in Louisiana, we usually favor the ACT over the SAT. They tell you that if you take the written portion, no one's going to sit down and read it. They tell you anytime you write an essay for a test, they're not going to read it. But somehow they expect you to put all that work in it and in such a small amount of time and stress over it and practice it 20 million times you before you actually take it. And yet these people are not even going to really look at it. They're just going to mark it up, throw it on the side, and that determines how you start off your young adult life. And that's perhaps for me well, the biggest thing I can remember about education for my so far under education as I can remember so far.
Well, I guess I'll go next. So, I remember a lot in school that teachers tend to get away with things when they really shouldn't. I remember even from my young life in elementary school, we had certain teachers who, say, I had a gym teacher who was really kind of rude to the students and would kind of turn his back and turn a blind eye to when students would be a little too rough with each other during gym. And there was, like, actually one instance where a kid broke another kid's arm, and the gym teacher, like, said he had no idea how it happened, and, like, they didn't put any fault on the gym teacher, and everything was blamed on the students, and the parents ended up having the problems. And that gym teacher never got any charges for neglecting, like, watching the children. So that kind of tells you initially just how the people in the school system were, even when I was young. But I noticed a big increase in how shitty the teachers got to be when I went to high school. Because when I was in Spanish class, I had a teacher who was a substitute for another teacher. She came in like halfway through the year. Uh, she was not from America. She was from Spain, and I have nothing against anyone who's from any other countries. I've met some of the nicest people who are from different places, but she was an absolute bitch to everyone, especially people who didn't want to learn exactly her way. She tried to start teaching us a different curriculum. She started trying to teach us that no, there was a different way to speak this word in Spain, and these certain words were not like supposed to be spoken. So she took us off the course. She started teaching us different phrases, and then like when students started saying, "Hey, you're teaching us the wrong stuff. We're not learning what we need to be," she started reprimanding them, and I was included in this. She started reprimanding myself and a group of other students, and she threatened to send us to the principal's office, or, the dean, for trying to tell her she was wrong in teaching something wrong. She also spent many classes showing like videos that had absolutely nothing to do with the course. She would show us videos of her hometown and just stuff that was basically just to show off herself and her life in a way of thinly veiled learning. But it really was so obvious that everyone in the classes started complaining about it. But since she was a teacher, she had special privileges. And I even noticed that because I was a fairly smart student, not to brag, that like I noticed that the workload was just really lax compared to what was going on like beforehand. Like she was not giving us any assignments. She was basically skipping complete like lectures that she was supposed to be doing. So I went and talked with her about this, and she started like calling me out during classes about being rude to her. And I brought this up with other people and my parents, and nothing ever got solved about it. She got away scot-free, being able to basically like fake the curriculum, change the curriculum, and fuck kids over when the standardized tests come at the end of the year, and just like expect that everyone's going to be fine. And I had my own like counselor tell me that she was a good person and there was no reason for you to be acting like this to her. And then that was not even the worst thing I've ever had happen to me in that school. The worst thing I've had happen to me was when I was in calculus in it was actually pre-cal in senior year of high school. I had a teacher who was also like very rude, and she would kind of bully the students. Um, if students didn't turn in assignments, like no one ever got this on video because she would confiscate phones if she saw them out, which, you know, you're not supposed to confiscate phones. It's the rule. It's like uh, it was a rule to just like keep it away, or like they would send you to the dean's office, but they weren't supposed to confiscate phones because it kind of brought up some legal trouble with them at one point. But like she actually hit kids on the head with the clipboard, and not like lightly, like just tap them on the head. She would kind of bop them on the head kind of hard. And it's like whenever someone doesn't turn in homework, for Christ's sake, that's stupid. And she gets away with literally hitting kids. And like I saw someone who was really thin-skinned in the class cry because they got hit on the head, and everyone else started laughing at them. And it's like, okay, that's real nice. She would call out kids who were like doing their homework ahead of time because they already knew the lesson, or you know, they had gotten their lesson notes done early. She would call them out and say, hey, we're not doing that. Just because you're trying to be smart doesn't mean you actually are. She would she knew which kids in the classes who were she knew which kids in the classes didn't know the answers, and she knew which ones were going to have the hardest time figuring out the problems, so she would constantly call on them to have them answer the questions. She liked to see people struggle in trying to answer the questions. It wasn't for the betterment of their knowledge. It wasn't to help them learn, because she didn't give a shit about that. It was really just to see people, like, get laughed at. I didn't see her once, like, there was one or two people in our class who were like, you know, those really hard, you know, the people who struggled hard, and then there were like the other people who like did really well. But the people who struggled hard, like, she just picked on them constantly, and there was nothing we could do about it. I don't know why, but our school system just favored these teachers over the stories of these kids, even if they were like legitimate stories, and multiple times these teachers had been reported. It's really sad when you see that these teachers get these teachers and staff members even get preferential treatment over kids who can take these up with higher staff members and even with their parents and say, yeah, I've literally been emotionally or physically abused by this person, and I have to see them every day, but it's not going to stop for an entire year. It's really fucked up when it's not stopping simply because they want to treat the person who has like the fucking job as the person who's better than the one who's learning or trying to learn.
Damn.
Yeah.
You
Okay.
guys
Well,
saw the message on the side?
yeah, that's what we're doing, Skep.
Okay, just make sure.
Um, at any rate, with me, it was kind of like I don't know. I grew up in the public education system, and originally, like for the first few years of my life, I went to Catholic school, but it was fucking awful. So I switched to like public education in third grade at like the local township school where I lived, and it was actually pretty nice. Like I liked the education system up until around middle school is where I started to notice it going to shit, and the teachers kind of stopped caring. It was the in middle school was the first time I had a teacher tell me like they're changing things to where like we can't teach what we want to teach. We have to teach this like curriculum. We have to teach this standardized shit, and that they didn't want to be involved in that because it's just kind of limiting. Um, and so like really what started to happen was in the public school system where I went, not only did we have so many kids that like they had to keep building new schools to like accommodate all of them, but when they all filtered into high school, everybody was like it was just so overcrowded that there was constantly an influx of new teachers going in and out because the teachers had so many kids that it was like a ridiculous it was just ridiculous. um, but I mean, I don't really have so many personal stories about like shitty teachers or anything like that, or teachers that like bullied kids or anything like that, because they would generally get kind of, you know, noticed pretty quick. I did have I do remember there was a teacher in like a substitute teacher in when I was in like what third or fourth grade that bullied some girl because she was a Christian or something like that. Like told her God didn't exist and that she was stupid and that kind of shit, and he got dealt with real quick. So the school system was kind of pretty quick on the draw with that kind of shit. Um, at least as far as I knew. But in terms of education, it was not the best. By the time that I got to middle school, they had cut so much funding for our township that literally all of the teachers were like, at least 99% of the teachers were coaches also for teams. They were PE teachers. So like they didn't actually even know the curriculum they were teaching. They were just teaching like shit by the book basically. And it really affected the way that everything went. There was never any time for like questions or like looking outside of the topic. It was always just focus on this standardized shit that we have to teach, and they couldn't even really teach it because they didn't understand the fucking subject matter themselves. um I mean, in terms really the place that I know that it was the most fucked up by just talking to other people is that in health class we did not have like a sex education portion of health class. We only had abstinence class in a public school that I went to. And so like that was their way of dealing with teenagers, telling them that like you know, if you marry someone, then, or if you wait to have sex until you're married, then like you can't get an STD and that kind of shit. Like that, they literally taught that in class. It's the most retarded bullshit, but like, I mean, they taught that to like thousands upon thousands of kids, and I know some of them fucking believed it. It would explain the large number of pregnancies that came out of like the immediate aftermath of like everybody getting out of high school. I mean, maybe not wholly, but it's just shitty health education. It's shitty education all around. Everything was just garbage. The schools kind of lost tons of students because they've just fucked up. I mean, the township that I went to, for instance, they decided that they were going to the school start the high school that I went to decided that they were going to start taxing the entire township in order to get funding for people to ride the bus, and people voted against that. So instead, they said, okay, people have to pay this enormous amount of money. You have to pay like $250 to get a bus waiver for the year. Otherwise, you have to bring your own transportation. So, like for a whole year, that you had to pay like $250 to ride the bus, and then it turned out at the end of the year that the township had enough fucking money to make the buses like for everybody. So they fucked up and actually just embezzled money out of people. So that's uh that's kind of what I grew up with, I suppose. Ocelot? Shit. I can't hear you, dude.
Emily?
Okay,
Wait.
so
Oh, never mind. Go ahead.
okay, so my school experience was pretty similar to Skeptics, where like many memorization and where you basically memorize and then you just spill it all over the test and then you just forget it and then you don't remember what you've learned. And I don't think that was the best way of learning because I barely remember I barely remember anything from all my school experience. The only critical thinking I've ever learned in school was during English class, since we had to we had like many debates about topics and like GMOs and stuff like that, and I learned many things from that because my topic was antidepressants, and I've learned, and I remember during the debate, the other debater was like talking about personal experience, and my partner debater was also talking about personal experience, and they were like one person would say antidepressants does work because it works on me, so therefore it's good, and another person would say antidepressants is bad because it did not work on me, so therefore it's bad, and then it was like a mess, and then they started fighting, and then that's when I learned that um, when you have debates, it's important to have more statistics rather than it. Like it's good to have like anecdotal evidence, but it's not like the best way to debate, I suppose. And I also learned like about like forming your own opinion is always good to have like to like do research before you do research on both sides. And I feel like even though the debate was a disaster, I learned a lot of things, and that's one part I remember like the most from many projects. But I do agree that there are many standardized tests where even the teachers would freak out and their mood would change and it's just all stressful and we won't be able to do many fun things because I don't have many like fun so
Emily, you're
yeah.
pinging out really bad.
I'm doing bad?
No, you're pinging out really bad. I couldn't hear you.
Oh, okay, sorry.
Oh, it's okay. It's fine now. It seems
We
like.
would never say something that mean.
No, I would never say you're doing bad. You're fine. Like you
Okay.
keep going. I was just telling you I couldn't hear you for a second.
Okay. And yeah, but I also like discussing with my friend earlier about why we don't like school, and it's basically mostly about like how it's boring, and we have to wake up so early, and we have to take up so much information and just all at once, and then we have to memorize so much, and it's also overpopulation that even in lunch there will be like there will be students sitting on the ground because there's like no seats left, and we have like two cafeterias, so that's like it's just weird.
Yeah, that doesn't make any sense.
I
Jeez.
I know. It even takes so long to get to class because there's like so many people blocking the hallways, and
Oh
it
God,
was
yeah.
yeah, it
I
was
had a lot
horrible.
to do.
Yeah, it's just horrible. And yeah, that's basically yeah, that's basically my problem about many like standardized tests because I honestly don't remember much except for the projects I remember the most.
Okay. Ocelot.
Yes. All right. Yeah, I had to drop for a moment because my sound wasn't working.
You're
Of
good. Let
course.
me turn you up really quick.
Geez, it's not. All right.
There you
Is
go.
that better?
Yep.
All right. Sorry to fucking stop that so quickly, but my school experiences largely subsists of me not really being able to do anything or fit into the sort of structure of school, and the school trying desperately to get me to fit into that sort of structure, to get me to work in that structure. Um, for a long time, I've visited many therapists that have tried to give me better systems that would make school easier for me. And I've been on several medications, and I've gone through several different programs, and it's all really been for nothing. I still don't do well in school. And it's because with me at least, it's just, well, the school system in general is really so standardized and so difficult to apply to everyone else. But instead of changing the education system to fit every student, they can't do that because there's too many kids there. So instead, it subsists of, if you do not work well in that environment, they will assign you somebody to help you acclimate better to that environment. But with me, I just don't do well to the point where I can never truly acclimate to the school environment. Not to mention that it's entirely negative. All the teachers are, so many of the teachers are frustrated and don't want to be there. The students don't care and are incredibly stupid and also don't want to be there. And it all, as you guys have mentioned, is entirely reliant on um, a tests. It's all just preparing you for tests at the end of the year where you sit in there for 6 hours and do a test and you just sit there and do nothing, because that is apparently what the testing has proved, that the most positive thing you can do is do a test and sit in a room for 6 hours without the ability to read, the ability to draw, or the ability to do anything other than lay your head down and just be a fucking zombie. They've actually taken away your ability to read a book when you have to sit in a room for 5 goddamn hours. It's so ridiculous. It's like the music video, Another Brick in the Wall. It's like that school in that music video. It's ridiculous. But if we're going to talk about my personal experience, it mostly is just me trying to focus, or trying to give a shit, or sometimes being so frustrated, so done with the system of school that I just give up. And then the teachers notice this and they assign me somebody to help me. They try to work with me over the year. And by the end of the year, either they know that I haven't progressed or they just pretend that I have. And they say, yes, we've made a lot of progress. And then the process repeats itself every year because that's all they are required to do. And really, yeah, nothing has really ever helped because I do not work in this environment, and their only solution is to get me to work in it. So as for bullying and teacher abuse, I haven't really been bullied because I don't really hang out with many people in school. I'm kind of a loner in that sense. I don't really hang out with really anyone other than like a very small amount of people, and that's not even very common. And I'm actually pretty nice to most of my teachers just out of basic politeness. It's not really anything personal. I'm just usually polite to people. As for the students, I mean, they're pretty stupid, but I've never been bullied by them. But they do yell out stupid shit sometimes when politics are ever mentioned, like Obama's a fucking terrorist and shit like that. Um, but they've never bullied me before. But they are very, like, they don't really know what to think of me. So usually one of them dares the other kid to come and talk to me. And when when you know that they've been dared to come and talk to you, you know that they either think down of you or that they're apprehensive about you. And usually they're all so annoying or dull that I really don't give a shit enough to actually engage them. So I usually just make them leave. Not by force, but I just kind of have gotten pretty good at being unapproachable. Now, this is of my own choice. I've not decided to be an out. No, wait. I have not. I'm granted. I'm not very good at starting conversations or holding one, but I feel that if I tried, maybe I could be more involved with people at school and the teachers. But it's just the point is I'm so far removed from caring anymore. And as for the teachers, they're all usually nice enough. I haven't really experienced a particularly horrible teacher yet. I'm sure I will, but the thing is most of my teachers would never. The teachers that I just had, even though it's summer break right now, the teachers I just had would never yell at me because they know it wouldn't get them anything. Because as I mentioned, I've gotten pretty good at being unapproachable, and most of my teachers don't really know what to think. So most of them, I would have to. I don't say the pledge in school, and I don't really do anything other than the bare minimum requirement. And if I, even then, sometimes I don't do anything. So I'm a bit frustrating to the teachers, but usually I'm nice enough to where it doesn't affect it. I hope I'm not being too incoherent, but I'm just kind of trying to list off what you guys have listed off. Um,
You can, if you
so
want, we'll do a rotation if you want to take a break.
um, I think this is all I have to say for now. If you guys have more to mention and I have something to add, then I'll throw it in. And if anyone watching this is not understanding, I apologize for being
No, you were
incohesive.
fine. I thought you were
Okay.
coherent as well. Yeah, that's fine.
All right, that's fine.
Yeah, what you said made sense.
Okay.
Well, something that I wanted to comment on is sort of just about, I don't know about Emily because I was gone when she was
That's okay.
speaking. Sorry. But it's something that everyone so far has mentioned is the problem with standardized tests and the fact that it really pretty much has deprived all of us of wanting to get an education and really getting a real education. Essentially, we know that not everyone is created equal, but we're all expected to take a standardized test. It just doesn't make any sense. The way school systems are here in America, they don't give a shit about how you learn and what you're best at. They don't take that into consideration. They don't take into consideration any of your individuality. They don't give a shit about that. It is a system based on conformity and trying to make you a member of this society in some way, shape, or form. So that was something I just wanted to comment on a little bit. Uh, and as far as my personal experiences, I mean, I really don't have any horror stories. Uh, But I mean, I've always kind of like remembered, at least from like elementary school until like middle school, kids were always extremely disruptive in the class, and I knew early on why it was because they're forced to be here. You know, just about everyone here probably to a certain extent at some time took their education for granted because it wasn't their choice. They never chose to go to school. It's forced upon us. And a lot of kids rebel against that in a sense by being extremely disruptive because we're having to learn things that, you know, like it really comes into question what is an education? What does it mean to be educated? I mean, if you really look at our system, it's just a product of piling shit on top of shit on top of shit without understanding anything, you know? So it's clearly a system that needs to be fucking overhauled. Um, and as for, let's see, high school was interesting and weird. Uh, High school got a little bit better because, kids, for the first time, kids actually get the chance to pick some of their classes. You get to pick some of your classes, only a small percentage of them, because you still have a lot of classes that are like mandatory. There's still a lot of mandatory stuff. And I think as a result, that made high school a little bit more bearable because at least in the classes I got to choose, those classes I actually got to learn something and got to have a little bit of fun sometimes because the kids actually wanted to be there. And also there were options of different, there's like a basic class, then there's like honors, and then there's AP. And AP is, obviously supposed to be like college prep to a certain, or usually college type of classes, and those were usually more bearable because again the kids actually wanted to be there, but to a certain extent taking AP classes was kind of a joke because the whole point of it is that at the end of the year you get to take this special AP test, and that counts for a credit, so that you don't have to take that in college, which is nice, but you also have to, in the actual AP test, I think it's like scored anywhere from like, let's see, 1 to 5, and I think you had to get a 5 in order to actually earn that extra college credit.
There's
And
3, 4, 5.
oh yeah, Skip just corrected me because I forgot. And also, back on standardized test a little bit. I don't know about what the grading system was like in your guys' schools, but in my school, it was based on like a 600 point grading scale, and you had to get at least a 400 to pass. A 500 was considered advanced, and a 600 obviously was the highest you could possibly get. And the funny thing is I've had, I had a few times where my principal would come to class. He would come into my AP government class because he kind of knew that's where some of the smarter kids were, and he could sometimes, say something intelligent. And he straight up said that, getting a 400 on the state test is basically like getting a 50. Because you can fail and pass. So it's a fucking joke. It's retarded. So.
Yeah, it was the ridiculous standards. Like in high school, I know and in middle school especially, they constantly pushed honors classes and AP and advancements. But the thing is, in the grand scheme of it, and I've tried telling people this, it does not matter. Maybe if you score like a 4 or 5 in AP, then you can get something. But if you're taking honors classes, you're doing more work for nothing. If you're taking an AP class and you're scoring at maybe a 3 is barely a pass, a 2 or a 1, you've done all that work for nothing. And one of the
Right.
also things that I remember about high school, or about school period, that made it a lot more stressful was the social interaction or lack thereof, to where
Mm.
you like, it's like teachers. I don't know what the issue is. There are some students who just don't give a shit, whether it's something going on at home that's causing them like that, or they're just assholes like that, to where they will, they, students also themselves make a toxic environment a little bit amongst themselves, to where you would think that, oh, we're all in this shitty, system. Let's try and bounce off each other. Let's try and get through this. But no, I've had it almost every time where, like, I could walk into a classroom and people are instantly picking out who they're not gonna like, uh, who they're gonna choose to listen to, who they're gonna lie to, and it's like for me, I had that, and I'm gonna get a little more personal. For me, like, I could walk into a classroom and within maybe a week or so, I already have half the class that just didn't want to talk to me, didn't want to sit by me, uh, didn't want to ever say anything to me. I didn't do anything, never say anything to them, and I've had the issue where I had trouble focusing sometimes on assignments and all this because I couldn't deal with the fact that they when they go into a classroom and they'll say, okay, we're gonna pair you up. Okay, we're gonna do some group work. Well, the schools there's no if there's no social interaction between the students, including someone like myself, where I didn't like people around because they say it's a zero tolerance policy in our schools for like bullying, but there's no way to control a little pompous ass kid who likes to run their mouth and who likes to harass people. In the middle of a classroom, I've had it to where I would be scolded because some other student would be running their mouth, and I would, to me, and and I and it's now gone to where you cannot stand up for yourself in schools nowadays. It like you, if anything happens, doesn't matter what you do, you can get sent instantly. They'll write detentions out the ass, or I know suspensions at my school. Basically, the amount of time they're gonna suspend you, you basically would be screwing up. Not by basically you wouldn't pass unless you did seat time recovery, which is sitting in a room, just doing work, just sitting in a room. There you go. That's your high school graduation, and like you can't interact in high school that much. It's really hard for some students, and there's no pathways. You can't go to your counselors. You think, oh, just go to the counselor, but the counselors in schools nowadays are overwhelmed too because they're the everything man. The counselors in my high school, I remember, were not just, oh, let's help counsel you, let's be there when the students need us. They were also the ones making schedules for hundreds of students in each grade. My high school was the smallest out of all y'all's, I believe, only about 1,000 students or so. but they had to write all the personal schedules. They had to deal with people coming in, going out. They had to deal with tons and tons of paperwork. My high school would change the counselors, change their grades, and there was never a place you could settle. Like you could not get settled in school. You were either upheavaled by the work, which was ridiculously stupid and pointless, or you were upheavaled by the fact that there was no ability to get good social interaction. Like you can't go to your, especially when it's in high school. What are you gonna do when you go to the principal and say, "Oh my God, this kid won't leave me the fuck alone"? They're not gonna do anything. There's nothing the school will do. Or if you're getting harassed by teachers who, there's this one cunt teacher in my high school everyone hated because she was just so horribly rude and a bitch, and the way that teachers can just talk down to you like you're a fucking moron. You could never get settled in school. It was never a place to go, and this is an institution of learning. This was basically a summer camp, but during the other seasons. That's how high school was for me. It was just a camp to go to. You went to camp for a couple hours a day with 1,000 other people. You had a 10:30 a.m. lunch for an hour, which was a shitty lunch, and then you went back into your classes, and you just were at camp. And then once you got out, you went back home, and then you had to deal with the shit at home too. And it's that's where I kind of try to coalesce everything together, is the constant changes and never settling on anything. There was never a clear cut vision for my institutions here. It was just constant changes. And then there were people who, like in elementary school, there were faculty and staff especially who were not fit to be teaching. They're hiring teachers who are young because some of the older ones, they can't get fired for seniority, so they're leaving. They're hiring young, inexperienced teachers. They're putting in people into special education departments who do not have the temper or attitude to deal with these some of the more handicapped students. And it's just a fucking mess. It is a mess, and there's no order to it. No matter, and then when they do put an order on something, it's on these bullshit test and grade levels. So basically, they're putting you in a toxic, unbalanced environment, and you're expected to make all these grades just happen out your ass. And they do not set you up for success. They do not set you up to learn and to become ultimately the goal of education, to become a better citizen, to get yourself set in life as an adult. They do not set you up for that. They set you up to pass their tests and shuffle on for the numbers. You are cattle, basically. I know my experience is here.
Yeah, I did want to say, like, I did have actually some positive experiences in a charter school that I went to for like a good time in high school, like a few years basically. That like probably from sophomore to like the beginning of my senior year. That was it was actually one of the higher rated schools in the like the state. It wasn't like it was basically free to go, but you had to be accepted. And they actually did like focus on education. They did the standardized tests were still a part of it, but it wasn't the overall focus of the school. The teachers were fantastic, but the administration was garbage, and they ran a high school like a fucking elementary school. They did not know how to treat like kids that were actually like coming into adulthood. So none of those kids probably have any idea how to fucking function as adults, because most of them came from like homeschool to this charter school where everybody was treated like elementary schoolers for all the way up to senior year and then out. But nonetheless, at least the teachers were good, and they actually like enjoyed their jobs and stuff, at least when I was there. But yeah, so it's not all bad. But you gotta find the right schools.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think the same here in a sense. I mean, not all my teachers were shit. It was more that the teachers and students were put in a shitty situation.
Yeah, exactly.
Um,
That's what I'm saying. Like there were teachers that I had in high school that could have fucking like actually, taught. They could have like been really passionate about their jobs. That's probably why they became teachers. But in the end, like they were forced to follow this standardized curriculum and not deviate from it to the point that like they didn't have any room for that.
mhm.
I
Yeah, something
remember.
I've noticed with at least half of my teachers is that they tried to kind of do their own thing as much as possible, but all well, with also trying to teach you what you need to know for the standardized tests. Because in my schools, we looked at the standardized tests like they were kind of a joke. They really weren't taking that serious. Like, okay, you got to take it, but it's not that hard.
Right.
That's kind of how it was perceived.
Okay. Wednesday, did you want to say something?
I was just. I'm going to wait till see if anyone else before I say anything because I know I tend to run on.
Oh, go for it. Oh,
I remember that when I was in high school, um, our our staff kind of had problems with trying to believe anyone about a lot of things. Like I had severe cases of bullying in high school, and I had overwhelming evidence, like screenshots from Facebook and stuff. But even with that, uh, the teachers and staff members, I even went like straight to the dean and like they did not believe me, and their reasoning was, oh well, these overwhelming amount of students have said you are a liar, and I have to believe this far greater amount of people as opposed to this one person who has these screenshots. It's like, okay, these are unedited screenshots, but thanks for calling me a liar. So I had to go through like 2.5 years of really hard bullying and people telling me I should kill myself simply because no one wanted to take me seriously. And I think that's a really bad problem in some of the school systems, at least around here. Teachers don't take their students seriously when they have problems. They just shrug it off like it's nothing to be worried about. And then those kids fall through the cracks, and it's like really sad because I'm not the only one who I saw have problems. I saw kids who dropped out of school because of the problems that got ignored. And when things get that bad, there really should be something more done about it. But they just ignore it. They continue to ignore the problem and it gets worse. Does anyone else have anything to say or add?
Oh, something that I wanted to add was like I remember in we had like these things called like a town hall meeting where they would take like okay they like one day of the week it would be the freshmen and the sophomores and the juniors, and then they would sort of like go over like how like some of the basic school rules, like, oh, don't sag your pants, and they would also look at the grades for that semester or whatever and see how each grade's doing and whatnot. And I remember during one of those town hall meetings, they talked a little bit more about bullying, and I think they straight up said that at least at my school, that stuff that you say and do on social media could potentially get you in trouble at school. Um, I mean, the experience Lauren just described sounds like a fucking nightmare, honestly. Uh, like the school that you went to must have been a fucking hellhole.
It really was because I don't know what kind of backwoods place would like have more than 3,000 kids and still like not be able to collect themselves together well enough to just say like, oh yeah, like we can help at least one person with their bullying problem. It's like, no, we're gonna believe this mob of people that just say this person's lying. It's like here's some great evidence. It's like nah, we don't believe evidence anymore. We just believe the word of the mouth. It's really scary, and I don't think that's what people should be going towards. But I'm seeing a greater movement of it in school systems.
Yeah, it's pretty. is pretty ridiculous, whatnot. Um,
I remember here at my high school, we had a few times where we had teachers that we all loved, but the teachers were smart enough, most of them were smart enough to say, okay, I cannot be your friend on Facebook till after you graduate for obvious reasons. We don't want, especially with like what happened in our city of Destrehan not too long ago, with two female teachers getting caught sleeping with some students. That most teachers around my high school were smart enough to not even get anything close to what happened in that city. So but I remember, excuse me, there was this one teacher who she was real, and this is what I go back to inexperienced teachers. She was really, really young woman, early 20s, I think. She was like besties with one of the students. They were constantly taking pictures on Facebook, posing, hanging out at each other's house, and all that. And like everyone fucking knew, like that. Nope, nope, that's not supposed to happen. It was just it was weird how unprofessional certain teachers were. Like it's one thing I don't care if a teacher like uses certain like curses and all that, but some teachers were extremely unprofessional in just how they handled their students and how they would just flip their shit at the the slightest trigger, or basically embarrass students in front of entire classrooms and not be able to perceive when a student you can easily look at someone who the way they react under a little bit of pressure, how they handle it. And as a teacher, you should be receptive to that. Most of the teachers I was around, they were not able to be receptive of that. And then I also remember, oh fuck, what the hell happened?
I think they're having internet issues, and I have to mute
Oh
because
god,
there's like thunder where I am, and my dog is going nuts.
damn it! Daniel dropped, and he's running the live stream. It's gonna crash, motherfucker.
Well, how long do we have till he needs to come back?
I don't know, but if it drops, I'm gonna be pissed because we're in the middle. We're in the middle. We're not even at the end.
We have a bit of time before he needs to come back.
Yeah. If we do drop, guys, I'm sorry. But
Well,
I was. Sorry,
oh,
guys.
I'm just saying that everything sounds fine so far.
Yeah. But I also remember I don't want to start on this until I know he's back. But keep watching the live thing while I
I'm home, but I'll leave it again. I'll be back.
Oh.
come on.
Or,
I'm about to open up Wednesday any day and get in there.
all right, yeah. I don't want there to be dead air, so
Yes, please do something while I hurry up and get in this, because watch the live thing. Tell me if it goes.
all right, yeah.
Lauren, is he almost back?
Yeah, where did...
Everyone, 3 people just dropped, and I don't know how long we're gonna have before this thing comes
Hello.
off. You back?
Sorry, our internet went out.
Were you guys talking in the meantime?
I was about to be in the start of story, but I didn't want to because I was afraid we were gonna drop.
Well, go ahead.
But I was gonna say one of the issues I had, and I still have with school, is there is an issue with how I don't have certain paperwork due to the fact that my birth mother did not get it. Wait, I'm losing track of thought. My birth mother did not do certain paperwork. So basically, in the state here, let me fall through the cracks. So basically, I am a ghost child, essentially, to the state, to where now I struggle with issues just attending school, getting aid in school, and then there's also issues here in the state now where getting financial aid is more important than ever because we have a program here called TOPS, and Taylor Opportunity Something Scholarship, and it's a three. I think there's multiple different levels of it to where you can get it's the biggest, one of the big, basically the biggest source of financial aid you will get in the state of Louisiana. And they constantly tell you, don't blow your tops, don't blow your tops. Most people, yes, will uh, most people will get their tops, but however, recently, if we have been having legislation, especially with the new governor, cutting our financial aid. My University of New Orleans, we just found out 90% of the fall semester will be funded, but only 45% is going to be funded for the spring. So you can imagine, and I know that majority, if majority, I would even say probably 90% or more of the students who go to my college in particular and across Louisiana depend on financial aid and TOPS. And you do have things like Pell Grant and continuing education, all these other sources, but when it comes to like higher education and college, I love because of the freedom of it. It's like it's being ripped away slowly. They push you through 12, 13, 14 years of grueling under education. You have to go through all this and all these bullshit things. You finally get to college. You get to be an adult. You get to start experiencing, start making decisions, seeing what works and what doesn't. And then here, they're taking away the ability for a lot of students to do that. And I go to a school that is not that super expensive. But when I start having that aid taken away, those numbers start going up. And I actually did get accepted to a even higher education school, Loyola of New Orleans, but I could not go. I cannot afford it. Higher education is not only extremely expensive, but also the methods to pay for it, they're just not funding it. And it's not because it's not there, it's because they choose not to put the money there. They are bending students over and fucking us in the ass. And it is extremely stressful and upsetting because I know I can produce results in college, but but as I do try to produce these results, and other students do too, they are basically having to now compensate this money, thousands and thousands of dollars. Where does this come from? It's hard to get I'm looking online every day for new scholarships. Those are not producing any results yet. Uh, and then I don't see any other forms of aid to get, and I'm not taking out loans because that's going to cripple me for life if I do. And I cannot, it is almost damn near impossible to maintain a job outside of while you're attending college. So you have all these layers of new problems. In high school, you generally could do the work and then maybe get a job and handle yourself. But now you're in college to where now you have to start paying just to learn. You have to pay to learn. You have to pay to live. You have to pay to eat. Now you have to do all these different things, and it's a whole new set of problems just to set up your young life. So by the time you become 24, 25 maybe, and you finally get out of college and you're in your young adult life, you have spent so many years of your life already with ridiculous and absolute ridiculous problems that should not be there.
Yeah, and I think we've been going for about an hour, so I think that's probably about a good place to wrap it up. Unless anybody, if we can go through everybody get their last words out, that'd be cool.
I think any sort of solutions one of the primary things we need to consider is that the school system, kind of like the government, is not flawed in a couple places. It's sort of fundamentally flawed and needs massive changes.
Oh yeah, I think that we could probably continue on another episode, not doing just personal stories, but talking about the actual state of the school system. And
I actually have someone who would want to talk about that and has
that would be cool.
Interesting stories as well. So, yeah. we'll talk about that on our own, though. Anyone else?
Yeah. Any other final notes, people?
They're all fucking garbage.
Yes, it is.